Good evening, folks. My name's Howard Carter. I'm the director of the Water Resource Recovery Facility Department. And with me is Stacy Thompson, the deputy director. And we're here to go over a little PowerPoint explaining the project, and then we're going to open it up to any questions you might have. We'll certainly try to answer them this evening, but if there's some that we cannot, we'll get back to you as soon as possible with those. And with that, Stacy, why don't you start it off? So a little bit of project history. The facility has been experiencing some flooding to some extent since at least 1993, when I first started with the city. Over the years, it's gotten progressively worse. We're attributing that a little bit to the rising sea. And in fact, in 2011, we actually, as part of the comp plan, put on a resiliency section that had to do with some of the flooding at the treatment plant in other areas like Camp Ellis. In 2018, we started a resiliency plan. We contracted with an engineering firm, and that was completed in 2019. In 2020, we were approached by the US EPA, wanted to know if we wanted to work with them on what they call a AAA process, which was an augmented alternatives analysis, where basically you take your facility, and if you're looking for an upgrade due to different things, whether it's climate change or growth or whatever, you present them with 4 different options, and you work through a stakeholder group to see which one's the best one. So at that time, the mayor and the city council appointed what was called the Coastal Resiliency Committee, and some of those members were as follows: Councilor Jody McPhail, Kurt Brown, Dan Chadbourne, Edward Chenette, Gregory Copeland, Ashley Gonzalez, Althea Masterson, Kevin Misek, Kevin Roach, and Amy Stafford. Also for city staff was myself, Emily Cole Prescott, who's our compliance manager, Joe Laveria, the city engineer, Emily Roy, the communication director, and Stacy Thompson, the deputy director. So with that, we ended up going through the steps that they require, and Stacy's gonna put them up on the stage here. No.
This is a show.
No, the next one. So some of these steps that the EPA required, I'm not gonna read them all through, but understanding community priorities, determining project goals, defining objectives, ranking the importance of the goals, establishing criteria and whatnot. So out of those, the community priorities were as follows, and they were to improve system resiliency that ensures water resource recovery facilities resilient to the effects of increasing extreme weather events and flooding that causes operational disruptions, loss of plant access and functionality. Number 2 was ensure financial stability, maintain balance of funding needed by making smart investments that consider the long-term health of Saco's water resource recovery infrastructure. 3rd was to improve ecological and environmental health, plan, maintain, and operate Saco's water resource recovery infrastructure using sustainable methods that enhance ecological and environmental health. Another one was increase public awareness and appreciation of the value of water services, and that we would communicate the value of Saco's underground assets and water resource recovery facility as it relates to public health, the ecosystem, community development, through collaboration with the community, and also to bolster community livability to encourage enhanced public access and green space use along the riverfront near the water resource recovery facility, and plan for long-term use. This facility support local community and economic development. But before we go in too much farther, Stacy's going to show a video that we shot back in December of 19, happened to be on a Saturday, where we experienced a high tide with a fair amount of rain and snow melt. And you can show that right now, see what happens with the flooding that happens with the right combination of tide.
This is a shot of the Saco Water Resource Recovery Facility taken on Saturday, December 14th. on this particular day. We have received over 4 inches of rain, with the flow coming into the treatment plant at over 13 million gallons a day. This is where the water enters the facility. As you can see, there's actually water cascading over the outside of the inlet structure to the headworks. This is due to the fact that from a high tide condition that we were actually bringing in more flow at over 13 million gallons a day than that was allowed to escape the plant because of the tidal condition. You can actually see the headworks facility where you do a lot of screenings and grit removal is just barely being contained. Here you see a shot of another structure prior to the primary clarifier that is overflowing as well and is running down around the back of the primary clarifier. Here is the primary clarifier flooding. You can see that the arm takes a lot of the grease and the floatable solids is submerged. Here is a picture of our aeration basins on the clip down below. You can see them at a normal operating level. In the above clip shows them submerged as they are and flooded, and we actually had to shut the air off to help contain the solids within the system. Here is a secondary clarifier that is actually in its normal operating condition. Here is the same clarifier flooded due to the storm. As you can see, there's no weirs for it to cascade over, although we were able to contain all our solids to be well within permit. Conditions like this do cause operational concerns, and staff has to be very diligent to try to contain everything within the vessels. In my over 25 years of working at the facility, this is the worst flooding that I have encountered to date, and it certainly has its operational challenges, and we hope to abate that with future work. Shooting over to the Storm King, and this alone took it over.
So there's an overview of the storm that was in 2019, like we said. Certainly, that's one of the worst ones. Not every backup is like that, but they are increasingly getting worse. This is an overview of the 4 alternatives selected. One of them was the cost of doing nothing. That $43 million you saw on the screen. That was actually from the Maine Climate Council. That was a third party that put that number out there, that $43 million. That was to build a light treatment plant across the country. It may not have nutrient removal, but nonetheless, that was the number they came up with. But what it does not consider is damages to the economy, the environment, or the community if the facility is unable to treat the incoming wastewater. So also running in parallel with that, the New England Environmental Finance Center, USM, NOAA, the University of Southern Maine, Maine Water, and the City of Saco are currently assessing economic impacts for wastewater and drinking water facilities. When this data is available, we'll share it with you. This was something that was started a few years ago, actually, before even that video was shot, because of concerns in Saco Bay flooding, whether it had to do with the Camp Ellis area or the river. So more to come on that one. Back to the upgrade. So out of the 3 chosen, this is the one that was picked. We went through these before. We knew what the cost was. The engineering firm specifically held those back till we'd worked as a group, the stakeholder group, to see the one that we chose. Stacy can use the mouse. Particularly what's going to happen with this one is up, you folks that are familiar with the old Public Works garage is across from the Yacht Club. If you want to move your mouse over there. Yeah, I'm on it. Are you on? Okay. So that area right now experiences some flooding with a certain high tide. That road backs out a little bit. Basically what we're going to have to do, though, is knock down that Public Works garage because we need an area to expand the treatment plant. So the goal would be to knock that down, move our admin building that's down in the blue, Stacy can move, and relocate it over there along with the garage. Now, the reason we need to do that is that's the only area that we've got some elevation we can work with to build a new treatment plant. So that's the first step, is we have to move that out of the way. But when we move over to the new Public Works garage, or the plan is we're going to bring that area up. I think it's going to be risen about 4 feet. We're gonna do the admin building, there's gonna be public amenities down there now. We're looking at bathrooms for the parking lot, we're looking at better lighting for the area, more recreational opportunities. We're gonna work with Park and Rec, Public Works, and others, the Conservation Commission, see what else they'd like down there. But also there's a plan to have a pump out station for the fire department. They don't really have a good spot to draw river water from, and they want to spray it back into the river. Once that phase is done, then we can move over to do this new treatment, which is called Aqua Narita, this treatment plant. All of what you see there pretty much would fit in this one vessel that would be, was it like 190 by 100? One reason we're a little bit on the design now is we're trying to work with DEP to give us a real number of what they're going to look for nutrient requirements going forward. We finally have another meeting with them tomorrow. That's kind of been holding us up to narrowing this down for the size. We'd also have to put a new headworks facility in. That's where all your water comes in, and you'd have your screenings and your grit removed. And we may look at other sludge or biosolids dewatering facilities because of the concerns with PFAS and PFOA. We may have to do something about that, as I think a lot of you folks have read in the paper or on the news. So if all goes well, this project will probably complete, if we started this spring, maybe done by 2026, maybe 2027. The plan is to use state revolving loan funds, which right now we're at 1% interest rate, and on a 30-year bond. Andrew, do we have any questions so far?
Howard, I'd sent a couple to Stacy,
Okay.
and those are the ones we have at the moment.
Okay. I don't know if that's a question. Just raise rates so all the burden is shared by all users, not just the homeowners. Okay. Well, in this particular case, this is referring to the treatment plant. Some people are concerned in this with main water as well, which is the drinking water. In this particular case, we finally, looks like we got some numbers from economic development that we should be able to use TIF dollars to pay for a good portion of this. And the rest of it would go probably to the sewer user fees. At this point, we don't anticipate using any general fund or tax dollars for this. Maybe Stacy, you can bring it up to the... So right now, based on an average house using 157 gallons a day, that's typically a family of 4. Right now, your sewer bill is running around $401. Now, of course, if you're a couple with just 1 or 2 people, it'd certainly be a lot less than that. And if you have a larger family, it would be more. If going forward, and we have to borrow the whole $50 million, and we use the TIF dollars, your sewer bill is projected to somewhere be in the neighborhood of $549 a year. Now, that would be incremental increases over the years. I think if we go through the state SRF money, they're only going to give us so much money per construction. Say so the first phase is 10 million, maybe they'll give us 10 million till the project's done, if it uses the 50. Now, that $549 is reflective of just no money whatsoever. So if we get any federal money, that doesn't count for that. That doesn't count for the use of sewer impact fees. So we bring those in for new construction. So the goal is to maybe use some of those impact fees to help pay down the debt, and that doesn't account for any new users on the system. So 549 should be, I'm not going to swear to anything, but it should be the worst case scenario as we see going forward. We're a little bit behind on those numbers because we had to work through the TIF Council to see what those are, and those just recently come out. Now, of course, this would still have to be approved by the City Council. All right, let's see, any other questions?
Howard, I've got one more for you.
Okay.
So Sarah asks, where will this be located?
Wow, that's a good question, Sarah, because we don't really have a whole lot of options. There was no other land really available along the Saco River. There is some land across from Saco Island, but that is already under construction, and They do not want to sell that land. Other than that, we would have had to go way inland, maybe up by Public Works. We looked at that. But just the cost of pumping the water there and back would have cost more than building the new treatment plant. So that's why, if we go back to the overhead map, that's why over where that blue box is to the right is where we're projected to build this new facility. Now, this unit there that Stacy's got the mouse on is actually 23 feet high. So what we'd have to do, we'd probably say have, I don't know, we haven't the design all the way done yet, but maybe 8 or 10 feet in the ground. The rest of it would stick up and we'd pump up to it so that we could account for that sea level rise. Well, here's some sewer facts, just in case. Some of them are on the brochure, but right now, the clean water needs, the clean water is sewerage. In the state of Maine alone, the need is $1 billion. Right now, Saco's current per capita debt is $1,209. The average per capita debt in the state of Maine is $3,829. Saco's legal debt margin is $375 million. Now, nobody would ever want to borrow that kind of money. $50 million is a big ticket. But right now, I think Glennis, the finance director, told me today that our debt is at $17 million as of right now. About 70% of all new development now happens on the sewer system. And the sewer services provide, it's true, 7,500 jobs throughout the industrial park. What else we get there, Stacy? Oh, we could do some.
We've got a few more questions.
Okay, go ahead, Andrew.
So we've got two from Bruce, and I'll give them to you one at a time. Could you give me some estimate of how much of the city is covered by public sewer?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I can. So right now, I got paper spread out all over the place here. I just had that one. What you get when you bring too many papers. Oh, here it is right here. So right now, I don't know what the community is at, 20,000 maybe, 21. But right now, the estimated sewer population is 13,060. So that gives you 4,836 residential connections and 353 commercial, governmental, and resident and industrial type connections.
Bruce's second question was, could you give the status of sewer and storm drain separation throughout the city? And maybe you could explain sort of the background behind what that means.
I certainly can. So back in the early 90s, the EPA mandated that all communities separate the CSO, what we call combined sewer overflows. And that's basically catch basins tied into the sewer system. And if it becomes too much of a flow for the treatment plant to handle, those would be a direct discharge to the river. Back at that time in 93, 94, we had 9 active combined sewer overflows. And I think, if I remember right, we were discharging just about 147 million gallons a year of sewerage to the Saco River. Since then, the city has undertaken quite a sewer separation project to separate the storm drains from the sewer system. Right now, we have 7 CSOs. We're getting close to closing an 8th one, and this project here would hopefully close a 9th one that gets us out of the sewer system. We still do have some combined catch basins along Main Street, just because it's just not economically feasible to separate those. So the plan is, with the new facility, we're going to increase our flow rate from be able to accept 8 million gallons up to 16 million gallons. So we're hoping to take all of that water that would now go to CSO, treat it, and then discharge it. Now, we may, if Stacy wants to go back to that map, we are actually looking at maybe keeping a few of these tanks, specifically where Stacy's got the mouse over some of those round structures that we might be able to hold an extra 1 million gallons and then treat it after the rain event stops. But yes, we have pretty much done our separation projects within the cities, within the city. Now, basically, we're down to, we got a bunch of old brick sewers that have been around since the 1800s. I think a lot of our work now is to line those so that they won't cave in the future. Some of you folks may have seen that on Route 1 and on Main Street a few years ago. We just recently did one on North Street. Some of you probably remember all the construction we had out there last year in conjunction with Maine Water. And there's still another one on Water Street in Pepperell Square that we want to do. Hopefully that answers your question, Bruce.
So that's all we've got online at the moment. I don't know if you all want to move through some of your FAQs while we wait for more comments, or you're welcome to open it up to people in the room as well.
Why don't we take a break for a few minutes then, say till 5 or 10 minute break, see if there's some more questions, then we'll do some more FAQs, or do you want to just do those first? Andrew.
Works for me. So we're going to take a short 5 to 10 minute break. We're going to put a pause screen up on the live stream. Anyone who's just joining us, please feel free to type in any comments, and they'll be responded to by WRRD staff when we return. Thank you.
Thanks, folks, rejoining us. Andrew, have we had any extra questions while we were on break?
Yeah, we did have a couple come in. So first up, from Jessica, if sea level rise is a factor and the sewer network in Camp Ellis and Kinney Shores is in the floodplain, what are you doing to address that? If nothing is addressing that in this plan, why not?
Well, I do know that NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, had put out a proposal for some work to study that, and the New England Environmental Finance Center, in conjunction with the University of Southern Maine, is working on that. They've contacted us and the Maine Water Company to look at the houses along the shore. Now, one of the big questions was the water lines, the drinking water lines. They're looking at that first, because I think the thought was if there was no drinking water lines, you wouldn't really need the sewer lines. We've had a couple meetings on that, but it's been probably 3 or 4 months since anything's been said about that. So I will have to look into that to see the status of the project. But that was a good question.
Got one more from Alan. We're having a nor'easter tonight. How much rain versus storm surge creating river backup, or both, would overflow the plant? So I guess I read that a little incorrectly. How much rain and storm surge creating river backup, or both, would overflow the plant? And what level would cause a plant shutdown?
Well, I think another good question, Alan. I think the biggest thing that we see, Stacy, you can weigh in here, is when the tide is over 10 feet high is when we start to have backups. Now, sometimes we're lucky if we have a rain event where we're during a low tide, like the case when you saw on that 19 storm. I think we had a tide of around 11 feet, plus we had 4 inches of rain. So that's what really caused that to overflow.
And we had snow melt on top of the rain.
And snow melt on top of that. I think some of the biggest concerns that we saw from the engineering review and the Climate Council is if we had a high tide that was over 10 or 11 feet and we had the right hurricane, even if it was a class 1 with the right wind coming in, that would inundate the plant and actually flood the facility. That's our biggest concern. But today's storm has not really been a factor. Last time we checked about an hour ago, we'd had about 1 inch of rain. And the flow wasn't bad. It was around 3 or 4 million. Typically, we'll see daily flows around 2 million gallons a day, but during a storm event, we can get up to over 13 million. But today, knock on wood, we're in pretty good shape.
That's all we've got online for now. So I don't know if you both want to work through some of the FAQs while we see if anyone has any more questions.
Okay. Right, well.
Please repeat the question, Howard,
right,
into the mic.
Right now, the treatment plant is not considered in the flood zone, but with the sea level rise, they say it will be in the flood zone. The plan is to elevate the site at least 4 feet. So the Maine Climate Council was going for, or the Maine Geological Society was predicting a 3-foot sea level rise. Now they're moving it up to a 4-foot sea level rise. But even so, even though we're not in the so-called FEMA flood zone, that we've had that river within about a foot or so of our driveway. So, yeah, we'd love to move it somewhere else. There's just no other spot that we can think of to move it. That would be, yes. Well, we have mentioned it to the city administrator and a few others. They were going to look into buying the property, but the owner does not want to sell it. It's not public property. They already have something planned there. It would be close. It's right there. It's the only area that's available. But I have.
Howard, can you please clarify for people online what you're discussing?
The question was, could we build it across the street from Saco Island? We have looked into that. We've been told that the owner is not interested in selling it. I don't know if the city administrator could clarify that. He's not in here right now, but we have looked into it.
So can you explain more about your sea level rise?
Right, well, there's a couple things there. There's TR 16, that's an engineering review that they want you to, for wastewater treatment plants, that they're mandating that anything that's critical infrastructure will be 3 feet above the 100, is it the 100-year or the 500-year floodplain?
100-year, I believe.
It's the 100-year floodplain. So we're building that above that plus an extra foot.
So the critical process, the Aqua Nareda, would still be 14 feet above that because it's going to be built up out of the ground.
Right.
So it's not just 4 feet above the flood level.
Right. So
It's going to be well above that because the actual structure itself is going to be way above that.
Well, that would be a code question, but I believe that to be, would. It does, okay, and that very well could be. We haven't got that far, to be honest with you. They've started to design the building and the layout with the garage, but we haven't got into the inside of it yet. A lot of those things should be starting to come out, well, probably in the next month or so, a lot of those design drawings. I don't know, possibly because everything's going with heat pumps now, so it would make sense that you would have it.
Howard, I just want to interject one more time. I apologize. If questions are being asked by audience members or attendees who don't want to use the microphone, if you could please
yes,
repeat the
if it
question
would
so
have air
online
conditioning.
can hear what's being asked.
Well, yes. Well, the lab, of course, would have air conditioning because we're required to have air conditioning. But I think with the use of mini-split heat pumps or whatever that heating and cooling medium may be, that would make sense to have it. I don't think you'd be putting in a #2 boiler anymore, so. You want to read one of the?
Yeah. So there was a question asked earlier online asking if we were already paying extra in our bills to have this built. So you want to clarify that?
Well, who was it?
It was from a gentleman named Josh.
Josh. Well, Josh, I'm wondering if you're confusing that with the main water facility. That is just going online. I think they'd raised their rates on that a while back. If it isn't online, it's just going new online. That's a drinking water plant. So if that's the case, that's probably why the rates are already up. If not, then maybe rephrase the question. I'll see if we can answer it a little bit better. Yeah, go ahead and read a couple of those.
So I'll just take a moment to read some questions that were asked of us via the website. First being, if Saco does nothing and the facility is wiped out by a storm, wouldn't federal funds from FEMA or other sources be available to rebuild? Obviously, we would never want our plant just wiped out. We are alerting the council and the community to risks that are present now and hopefully are never at the point where the facility is wiped out by a storm. We are already experiencing ongoing hydraulic backups, which means the treated water can't leave the facility. We have experienced flooding and intensifying CSO events, and we cannot say definitively whether federal funds would be available in such a situation. From our perspective, we try to be proactive rather than reactive, especially as we are so near the Saco River, a significant state resource. Another question that was posed to us was, what does a yes or no vote mean on this question? A yes vote means that you want the bond order to be ratified and approved, whereas a no would mean that you do not want the bond order to be ratified and approved.
Any others, Andrew?
Nothing else online at this time.
Okay. Do you
want to ask that in the mic?
Yeah.
So my question is, why the $50 million plan when there have been cheaper plans along the way? What does the $50 million plan include?
I think the cheaper plan you were talking about is when we first did a resiliency study before it went into engineering, and they were given a couple of different scenarios. Since that, we did the deeper dive with the 4 different scenarios that we walked through. One was to do nothing from the Maine Climate Council. The other one was to rebuild in place. Another one was to do this aqua-narita, and another plan was to do an either newer technology that came out of Korea. We worked through all 4 of those scenarios, and we didn't know what the cost of any of those were until we were done the exercise and they released the numbers. After that, the plan that was the most sought after by the Coastal Resiliency Committee was actually come in at $70 million. That's just too much. And by the time we applied the different things to it, it ended up being the number 3 project. The number 2 project was a little cheaper, but basically what it did is rebuild a lot of the old facility that's already over 50 years old. So the thought was and it was still low on the ground, the thought was to just do the new one. And that would help us with population growth, would help us with stormwater, or the CSO problem, and for nutrient removal going forward. So that was a plan that would really lead us into the next 30 to 50 years. That's why that one was chosen. Any others?
We've got one more online, Howard.
Okay.
Alan asks, if state and federal monies come in, would that reduce the bonded total to less than 50 million?
That is our plan. That is exactly what we want to do. Now, we have not gotten a final price from what this is going to cost, but we know we certainly don't want any more than 50. But the plan is at this point to reduce the cost. That is absolutely correct. And we're hoping as if any infrastructure package comes through that we'll be able to apply for some of that money as well.
Is this working? Does it connect to that?
Yeah.
Okay, if you don't have your full plan renderings done, how do you know it's going to cost 50 million? What if it costs more?
Well, and that will be an issue. See, when we had to have the engineer give us a cost estimate when we did the plans. So they're in design, we know what the cap is. We'll have to make adjustments or cuts to fall within that. Because we're not going to have any more money than that, so.
Why are you holding this question and answer for the first time to the public after people have already voted in a week before voting day?
I think we've been pretty upfront about this all along. We've been on this for 3 years now. We've had all of our stuff from the the Coastal Resiliency Committee online. Everything's been there. We've been out to different groups. I don't know. We've been trying to be as transparent as we have been able to be with this. So. It's moving fast. So.
I have another one for you.
Okay.
Why is it at the planning board meetings you say that each project, no issue with sewers? Why wouldn't you put a capacity cap on the housing?
Well, say that again.
At the planning board meetings, you're always quoted saying there's no issue with sewers when 27 houses go in here, so-and-so there. If there's such an issue, why aren't we putting a housing cap?
A housing cap is not up to, that would be more of a council decision. It's not the incremental housing that gets you, it's a lot of the industry all coming at once. It just, what used to be 10 houses there, 30 houses here is now becoming a factor now. So we have to, for years, I guess a better way to say it, for years we were doing so much separation in the city that I think Bruce had the question for, that our flows were going down because we were getting a lot of the rainwater out. Then probably a few years ago, we started going up, and in the last few years, it's starting to spike right out. But that and some certain industries have added to the flow as well. So.
There is something out there in the public that they think we need this to pass in order to get a new school, but the new school will still be serving the same amount of children in this city. Why is that out there? And if that's the case, where would the school go that requires this to be passed?
I don't know how you tie in the schools to sewer capacity. You've lost me on that one. Well, you want to have a good working sewer system for the school. For now it does, but I don't know if it will in the future, Jessica. I don't know that. That I don't know, but I don't know how the two are really tied together that much. But
Why wouldn't you wait until next November when the school bond has they have more of a view where they're going? Just because we have state funding doesn't mean all of our schools will get addressed. We could have many schools that don't get touched from state funding and have a major city bond that needs to be passed. I have been out there in the public speaking to citizens about this sewer bond, and they have told me, I don't support the sewer and I don't support the schools. So if $50 million passes now, there may be people out there that don't pass the school bond. That you can't prove me otherwise. It could happen. But why can't this wait until next November? It seems you don't even have all your plans done. You don't have everything out there. You can't tell us how we're paying for it. It just seems, this is the first question and answer, and you've done the videos over the summer, but none of those fancy videos had any mention of the bond coming.
I think the reason for going now is it's going to take 5 years to build this project. I think we touched on. Another point is what we have the low interest rates, and we have a chance for some of that infrastructure money to be freed up, so we want to be shovel ready for that. That's the big part of that. What was the other part of the question? Oh, the schools. I don't know. We've tried our best to try to organize. We know where the money's going to come from now. It's going to come from the TIF district and the sewer fees. We tried to work around this very hard so that we would not get into the general fund or the tax base. Well, that'll be something for, I don't know how to answer that. Yeah. That's the path that we're going on right now. That way you'd probably ask your counselor or the mayor to weigh in on.
Howard, we've got one more online if you'd like me to chime in with that.
Okay.
Alan asks, isn't the hurry to leverage the low interest rates available, like the 1% state money? I think you kind of just mentioned this a moment ago, but I wanted to get the question in.
Right. That is a big driver of that, of the SRF. We want to be in position to do that. That's exactly right. And if this infrastructure money comes about that the Biden administration is proposing, we want to be shovel ready.
Do you think you should explain the shovel ready part of it? That people understand that?
Well, I think the shovel ready, that's a good question. Stacy asked about shovel ready. That means you're into at least 30% design that you can go out to bid with this, or very shortly go to bid within that fiscal year. Another question we can read?
Yeah, okay. Has the possibility of constructing a combined wastewater treatment plant with the city of Biddeford been considered? We've considered multiple options for our facility, included but not limited to regional options. However, the underground piping, which we call our collection system, is already in place. Most of this piping flows by gravity to Saco's existing facility. The cost of repiping the collection system, then building or renovating to accommodate flow to one treatment plant would be extremely high. It would also require significant construction that could impact residents and businesses as underground piping is relocated, added, or removed.
Right, just trying to make room for ours on our site, increasing the flow from 8 million to 16 million gallons a day is caused a tight lot. If we try to combine the two plants, it would be a significant amount of land and cost. So that made it not feasible. Any others, Andrew?
Nothing online at the moment.
All right. Well, we'll wait a few minutes, see if we have any other. Jessica, you got any others?
We've got someone who is unable to hear something that was said a few minutes ago, and I'm not sure if you can understand without more context, but Sarah asks if she heard wrong something about school fees, question mark. It is difficult to understand. So I'm not sure if there was something mentioned about school fees earlier. I don't believe so.
I think, Jessica, can complete me if I was wrong, why do the project now instead of waiting until the school?
She's talking about sewer user fees.
Oh,
right?
sewer user fees. No, I don't think we need to do the sewer to have the new schools, but if you build a new school, you do want to have a good sewer. I guess that's the only connection I can make with that, but.
Excuse me, just for a moment. People online can't hear members of the audience speaking without a microphone, so they may be confused at this moment. I don't know if you could repeat some of the question.
Jessica, repeat the question, and I'll answer it again. Yeah, have her type it again, Andrew, if she can.
Ask Sarah to clarify.
Do you know what the percentage of sewer increase fees will be? What is your package that you're hoping to present? How much from the TIF and how much sewer increase?
Yeah, we had the chart up there. Let's go back to that. So basically. Oh wait, I actually have it. What did you say? No, go back. So basically, what we're looking at, if we did the whole $50 million bond over 30 years, the payment on that would be right around 1.9 million gallon. $1.9 million a year. Out of that, it's proposed that we take $800,000 a year from the TIF fund for the next 25 years. That would leave around 1.1 million to make up. So in order to make that up, we would have to raise the rate approximately 37% over a number of years, probably at least 3 years. But that takes into account no federal monies being received, not using any of the sewer impact fees that we collect during construction, and no new growth. So we project that to be the worst case scenario, so that a family of 4 would probably have a sewer bill right now around $401 a year, would then move to $549 a year, or just 40-something dollars a month, I guess it'd be equivalent to.
So if the sewer fees go up 30%, 37% over 3 years, how much does that also affect the water bill?
Well, it has nothing to do with the water bill. The water bill is completely separate.
What was that man asking? His name was Ron or something. We were sitting there and you did agree with him that it had something to do with your water bill.
See, the Maine Water also built a new drinking water facility, and I think that one was around $55 million. But I think they've already started doing a rate increase on theirs. So that could be what he's talking about, would be my guess. Because we haven't raised any rates at all because of this yet, anyway, so.
Howard, so Sarah thinks she may have misheard, but she thought she heard something about mention of school fees. Can you just clarify if there's any school fees associated with this project, or if
no,
maybe what Stacy had mentioned earlier about
sewer
no
fees. School fees. It'd be the sewer user fee increase and the TIF funds to try to pay for this. We're trying to not take anything out of the taxes of the general fund, so maybe that could go toward the schools. Now, I think it's important to note, too, that TIF funding is not available to schools. That's more for economic development, and that's why the sewer would fall into that.
No more questions online at this time. I'm not sure if you have any more FAQ questions you'd like to go through, or we can put out a last call for questions. Yeah,
last call, I guess. It's getting to be 7:30. they can always write some in. We have an FAQ page on the website. You can put the little QR code up there. And of course, you can always go to the cityofsaco.org. Well, they all have a little dinosaur.
I have another question.
Okay.
37% is rather high, and rents in Saco are already very high. Has
Yeah.
that been anything that's crossed your mind about what that will do to the rent prices?
I think all dollars add up. If you go back to the rate, I think even with the rate increase, it kind of puts us in the medium of where most of the communities in southern Maine are. We have been very low for a long time. We've been able to do a lot of our own work going forward, but this project is a little bit out of the scope of what we can do. And I think even with the rate increase, as much as I hate to see it go up, will put us pretty much in line with other communities.
What is your plan if the bond fails?
Well, if the bond fails, then we'll probably have to get back together with the Coastal Resiliency Committee and come up with another plan, see what they want to do, whether to relook at it again, maybe go back to bond next November. I don't know. I can't answer that at this point, so. Well, we'll probably get the stakeholder group back together and with the council, see what the thoughts are. All right, folks, well, thank you for joining us tonight. Certainly feel free to reach out in the next few weeks. We're certainly going to be around. If you want, call. You can stop down to the treatment plant, take a look around, and you're more than welcome. Anything to add, Stacy?
No, just thank you for your time and for listening to us. We appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, folks. Have a good night.